Hello, my name is John Bannon. I'm an attorney and philosopher. In today's video, I'm going to explain how superdeterminism destroys modal realism. When I talk about superdeterminism, I'm referring to a very specific, unique version of superdeterminism known as Hansonian superdeterminism, which is based on the proof of Swedish theoretical physicist Dr. Johan Hansen, published in the peer-reviewed journal Physics Essays at volume 33, number 2, June of 2020, on pages 216 to 218. It is entitled Bell's Theorem and Its Tests, Proof that Nature is Superdeterministic, Not Random. So Hansonian superdeterminism says that we live in a static block universe without cause and effect in physics, or probabilistic causation, or physical causation. This is different than classic superdeterminism, first posited by Dr. John Bell in 1985, because classic superdeterminism uses hidden causal variables, whereas Hansonian superdeterminism disproves causation and therefore cannot rely on hidden causal variables. Instead, Hansonian superdeterminism says we live in three dimensions of space and one hidden static dimension of time in this fourth dimensional static block universe that is inhabited by events or particles that are like pebbles stuck in concrete. You can't move them, they don't change, they're permanent, but they do create patterns through the static dimension of time. And these patterns are described by our logical mathematical laws of physics. So modal realism was posited by philosopher David Lewis. And it basically says that our universe has no special privilege over other possible universes to exist. And therefore, all possible universes must exist. And all these other universes exist as brute facts. And the logic displayed in these universes exist because these universes exist, and the universes don't exist because of the logic. So David Lewis is claiming that there is this infinite multiverse of unconnected possible universes covering all the possibilities that are logically possible for reality, and that it's simply a brute fact that this exists. And the basic reason is because you can't give any reason why our particular universe is real and these others aren't. So therefore, they're all just as real as our universe. Um, but under Hansonian superdeterminism, human thoughts are physical realities and aspects of our block universe. The reason for this is I'll give you an example. If you have a conscious thought to move your arm, then your arm movement is undeniably a physical reality. And that future arm movement has to be a predetermined event in our static block universe. But if the arm movement is a predetermined event in the future of the static dimension of time, then your conscious decision to move your arm must also be predetermined in order for the arm movement to be predetermined. But conscious thoughts are located where there are brain particles, and brain particles are physical realities. So the physical reality of the brain particles is what must be the predetermined aspect of the static block universe that leads to the predetermined conscious thought to move the arm. Um, Now, it may be difficult to understand how an immaterial experience like consciousness could be a physical reality. It's mysterious, but I will give you my best guess as to how that's the case. If you think about the universe it can be described by logical mathematical laws of physics. So that's telling you that the universe is logic. So the logic of the universe is what allows for the reality of physical reality. But if logic can have its own reality, then why can't a different form of logic have a different form of reality? So if you think of brain particles as positioned in the dimension of time in a very specific arrangement that creates its own form of logic, a logic I call the logic of the possible, then that logic, in order to exist, would have to have its own reality. And that is the reality we experience as our immaterial consciousness. So, under Hansonian superdeterminism, because human thoughts are physical realities and aspects of the static block universe, then human thoughts on quantum mechanics are physical realities and aspects of our static block universe. So, our static block universe has the logic of quantum mechanics inherently within its structure because human thoughts about quantum mechanics are part of our block universe. Now, quantum mechanics requires virtual particles, which are transcendent mathematical entities that are not physically real. In fact, there was a recent scientific experiment which proved that virtual particles played a role in proton and hyperon collisions. So, um, a under modal realism, however, only physical things are real. So, modal realism cannot account for uh, transcendent logical infrastructure like virtual particles, because virtual particles aren't real. They're an aspect of the math of quantum mechanics. Therefore, the transcendent logical infrastructure, such as virtual particles, must logically precede the physical block universe. Um, there must be a transcendent logical uh, connection between the universes in David Lewis's multiverse that account for whether all the possibilities have been covered in this multiverse. So, because there has to be transcendent logic that precedes physical reality, then this transcendent logic must connect the universes in under modal realism in order to account for all the possibilities to make sure they're all covered. So um, David Lewis would say, well, if something is possible, then it must be real in some universe somewhere. These are unconnected universes. But that presumes that there's some sort of accounting system to make sure that everything that is possible actually is real in some universe somewhere. The universes can't tell because, as far as they're concerned, they have no common reference frame to even know that each other exists. So, because there's a transcendent logic, then there must be this transcendent logical connection between these uh, disparate universes that accounts for all the possibilities being covered in this multiverse. So, modal realism requires a transcendent logical connection between the universes and a transcendent logical entity like virtual particles. However, the existence of this transcendent logical connection, or uh, this transcendent uh, mathematics under quantum mechanics, implies the atemporal creation of the block universe. Because why do you need transcendent logic unless you need it to create the physical universe? That's the only reason for it. So you have to have atemporal creation of these universes. And once you have atemporal creation, then you have the special privilege or the spark that allows our universe to say it's real and the other universes are not, or not necessarily real. That's what disproves modal realism. I'm sorry, modal realism. Now, you might say to yourself, well, okay, there's this transcendent mathematical logic that is inherent to the structure of a physical block universe. So, how do we know that that math itself isn't what causes the existence of these block universes? Well, the answer is because if it was the math that was causing the block universes to exist, then those block universes would have to always exist by necessity. They'd have to be eternal. But if they're eternal and they have this transcendent logic inherently in them, and we know this because you can have thoughts about this transcendent logic, and your thoughts are part of that block universe, then the block universe has no need for a redundant, transcendent mathematical realm that creates it, because it already has it within its very structure and it always exists. So it doesn't need a transcendent reality in order to exist. So that transcendent reality would be mathematically redundant. There would be no need for it. Therefore, it couldn't cause the existence of these eternal block universes. Therefore, you know that the transcendent math is not the cause of the block universes. Nevertheless, a transcendent logic is necessary for the existence of these block universes, which means that these block universes have to be atemporally created by a um, God, by a source that knows and understands what it's creating before it creates it, and then creates it atemporally outside of space time from nothing. Uh, okay, well, I hope you learned something, and I'll give you a second to read the board. All right, until next time, take care.